So far, in the anger cure, we have looked at some very practical steps to dealing with your anger. In the next couple of modules, I will be focusing on some deeper psychological models that will help you understand yourself and your relationship with others. I hope this will allow you to really deepen your sense of self-awareness and help you develop greater understanding of where your anger comes from, as well as giving you tools for greater personal growth. By now, I expect you have heard me mention transactional analysis, or TA, a number of times. Well, TA is a theory of personality and behaviour developed by Dr. Eric Berne way back in the 1960s and was originally developed as a form of psychotherapy. Since then, it has been developed further and is now used across a number of fields, including psychotherapy, counselling, in organisations and in education. From its inception, TA has been designed to be user-friendly, allowing the client to be fully involved in the process. For this reason, instead of using technical medical jargon or Latin phrases, TA uses day-to-day language that can be understood by anyone. The core of TA is the ego state model. This says that our personality is made up of three distinct observable parts with their own thoughts, feelings, and behaviours. At any given time, we may be thought of as acting from any of these ego states. This may sound complicated at first, but I will go through it with examples later. Essentially, what the model tells us is that what we do and say invites a particular response from those around us, and vice versa. You know how I said many times that nobody else can make you angry? Well, it's true, but they sure can invite you into an angry place. But by now, I hope you have begun to realise that you don't have to accept that invitation. You can choose to behave in a different way. Well, the ego state model and the drama triangle, which I will cover in the next module, is going to help you understand what is happening in these situations. The ego state model is normally drawn just like the diagram on the right, with three circles placed on top of each other. The ego states are known as the parent, the adult, and the child. So you may see this referred to as the PAC model. So let's start with the top circle, the parent ego state. The parent is our thoughts, feelings, and behaviours that we learned from our parents or other significant figures in childhood. Just take a moment to reflect on this. Think about all the rules we will have picked up from our actual parents without even thinking about it. Eat your vegetables. Look both ways before crossing the road. Be on time. It's as if our entire experience of our parents has been stuck on a microchip and wired into our brains to give us a running commentary on what we are doing. Can you hear your parents in your head as you go about your daily life? Don't be late, son, or else. Are you really going out dressed like that, dear? What will people say? So the person we are today has been filtered through these parental messages. Perhaps we are adapting to them, or maybe we are rebelling against them. Either way, those parent messages are having an effect on us in the here and now. The parent ego state is more than just your experience of your actual parents. It becomes the storehouse of all our external influences in early childhood. Grandparents, teachers, scout leaders, Girl Guide leaders. In fact, our parent ego state will also be influenced by our wider culture, which may include religious and political values. It can be useful to liken our parent ego state to our internal rulebook, the list of do's and don'ts that we carry around in our head. Sometimes these rules are very useful, They help keep us safe or show us how to be part of the wider community. But sometimes these messages can have a negative effect on us. They define what we feel is acceptable or unacceptable within ourselves. Remember when I talked about secondary or substitute emotions? Well, they develop in response to parent messages. Don't do this. Don't feel that. That's not okay. These messages can have a profound effect on our child ego state, which we will talk about next. The child ego state is our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors which are a direct replay of our childhood experience. So, where the parent ego state is the store of our experience of our actual real life parents, the child ego state is our experience of being parented. That wonderful warm glow we felt when we were being hugged and praised, or the dreaded feeling in the pit of our stomach when we were being chastised. So, a moment ago, I talked about how we might have experienced certain negative messages from our parents. Don't do this, don't feel that, that's not okay, etc. Well, the child ego state stores our experience of hearing these negative messages, how we felt, what we thought, and the decisions we may have made about how to behave in the future. If we are lucky, then our child experience was relatively good. Any negative experiences were counterbalanced by the secure feeling of being loved by our parents. As a result, we may grow up learning to process and manage difficulty, which is built upon a foundation of generally feeling that we are an okay person. Unfortunately, it is too often the case that the child internalizes these messages with a feeling of not being good enough. As a result, they grow with an essential sense of not being okay. Over time, the child adapts to these messages by learning new protective behaviors. It is these behaviors that may be causing you a problem in your current life. Imagine you get an email asking you to go and see your boss immediately. How do you feel? Do you get that sinking feeling in the pit of your stomach, worried that something bad has happened? Does this feeling remind you of anything? Perhaps being told off at school for being late, or being reprimanded by your parents. Triggers in the here and now can send us back into our child ego states as if being pulled back by a rubber band. When we are acting from our child ego state, we feel small and powerless, like we did when we were a child. An outside observer may see that we have some childlike mannerisms. Perhaps we are biting our lip or playing with our hair, just like we did as a child. As I hinted earlier, there are two basic ways the child reacts to these parent messages. The first is to adapt to the needs of the parent. Grown-ups who have an adapted child ego state may seem as though they adhere compulsively to the rules. They are likely to be polite and punctual and conform to social norms. However, they may also feel guilt and shame when things go wrong, blaming themselves inappropriately. Over-adaptation may lead to anxiety and depression. They may become angry when their efforts and good deeds go unnoticed. On the other hand, the child may rebel against the parent messages. Grown-ups with a rebellious child ego state may be rule breakers and nonconformists. On the positive side, they may be creative visionaries pushing society to new frontiers. But on the negative side, they may become sullen, resisting, and rageful. It is important to note that both the parent and child ego states are archaic in nature. By this I mean they contain thoughts and feelings and behaviours that are a response to historical stimuli, not to the reality of the here and now situation. If someone seems to be reacting in a manner that seems out of proportion to the situation, it is likely that they are acting from one of these historical ego states. So we have discovered the parent and the child's ego states and learnt how they are a response to our historical or past situations. This leaves us with the adult ego state. As you may guess, the adult is our thoughts, feelings and behaviours that are appropriate to the here and now situation. It is likely that most of us spend most of our time in our adult ego states as we go about our daily functions of work, driving, cooking, etc. So let's try and bring the whole model together. Imagine I'm driving to work. Whilst operating the car controls, I am also checking in my mirror to keep aware of the traffic around me. I am in my adult ego state. I notice the car ahead brake sharply. I glance in the rear view mirror and apply my brakes in an emergency stop. I feel a moment of fear as I close on the car in front of me. I finally halt a few inches away from a collision. During this time, I have remained in my adult ego state. My actions and my feeling of being scared are a direct consequence of the here and now situation. As the fear subsides, I shake my head and punch the steering wheel in annoyance. People like this shouldn't be on the road, I mutter to myself. My behaviour was a copy of the way my father would react to a similar situation. In this moment, I have shifted into my parent ego state. The traffic begins to move, but now there is a tailback, and I'm going to be late for work. I notice a sense of anxiety creep in. I'm going to be late for work, I think. The boss is going to give me a right telling off. I think about how I might sneak in unnoticed. I have shifted to my child ego state. I am replaying thoughts and behaviours I would have had as a boy, being late for school, knowing the headmaster was on the lookout for any latecomers. I started biting my nails, just as I did when I was a scared kid. What am I worrying about? I thought, regaining my adult composure. My boss is understanding, and I can make up the lost time in my break. This is a more realistic view of the here and now situation, and I am back in my adult ego state. But I hope you can see how during the day, small events may trigger us into our parent or child ego states. Before we finish today, I want to emphasize that no particular ego state is good or bad, but the adult ego state leaves us with more options. If we are trying to problem solve, it is probably useful for us to be in the adult ego state. In next week's video, I will look in more detail at the parent ego state, which can be both our moral guidebook, but also that annoying internal critic. Until then, bye.